thanks very much for making the time to speak to us today. It must be a very difficult time for you, your community, as well as your family. Just tell us what happened in your father-in-law's recollection of that day, Thursday.
Well, first of all, we heard the same way as everyone else through a news alert coming through that there'd been some sort of incident. And I said to my wife, this is in Manchester. And then gradually over the next few minutes, wait a minute, it's in Crumpsall. Wait a minute, isn't that where your parents go to synagogue? And sure enough, it turned out to be. And we had a very worrying half an hour where we didn't know where they were, in particular with my father-in-law, what was going on. And actually, we finally found out because we had Sky News on and literally saw him pictured in the street on Sky News. So we knew he was safe and out. We jumped in the car, drove to Manchester, and that took about 4 hours. When we got there, he had just got back from helping the police with all of their inquiries, along with, I think, 36 of them in total who'd been in the synagogue at the time, and what he told us was absolutely harrowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And incredibly, Sir Grant, you're the second person to say that, having watched the coverage here on this channel, you were able to see family members. Alan Levy was also there, and his son was able to see that his father was OK because of watching the television news. Has your father-in-law been able to talk to you about, what it was like actually inside? You've talked about the number of people there, but we've heard about doors being barricaded, this individual trying to get into every single entrance. Take us through what he's told you about what it was like inside in those moments.
Yeah, so when we arrived in Manchester, he was still in his suit and tie on, and as he had gone, dressed to synagogue, and he sat there and was actually able to lead us through all of it in immense detail. I think it's kind of important, actually, for him to be able to talk about it as well. And he told us that he had been part of the sort of crew, as it were, manning the door. He'd been on security that morning, and he was behind the door, holding them closed. They'd locked them, but this maniac was still trying to get in. He had a knife, a 7-inch knife. He's stabbing it against the window, trying to break it. He's trying to kick down the door, and eventually he goes and picks up flower pots, which were out front, and is trying to break the glass using those. And all the time, behind the door, my father-in-law, the rabbi and others were all trying to organize themselves to make sure that each of the doors was held closed. And very, very tragically, the gentleman that they'd helped to position on the door next to where my father-in-law was the one who died from that stray bullet intended for the for this terrorist that unfortunately came through the door, hit somebody in the leg, and then actually someone on their body. He went straight down, and my father-in-law describes him as, immediately knowing that unfortunately he wasn't going to make it. So the whole experience, obviously, those who died, the two who died, and those who were injured, and then for the wider, those who are directly involved, like him, and then for the wider community, and I think for the whole country, to think that there are maniacs like this, unhinged individuals, who would go and do something like this and think that somehow, this could be in any way, shape or form a good thing to do. That is the depressing part of it. It's not who we are as a country, and I really hope and pray almost that everybody feels, every decent person feels the same way about Britain, and that this one individual shouldn't be allowed to terrorise the country through this extraordinary and disgusting behaviour.
Just a horrific act, Sir Grant, as you rightly point out. And I was on the day when it was happening, and I was struck by just how many people this was going to sort of ripple through, not just those who were inside, the families of all those there, the wider community, and of course the wider society as we kind of come to terms with this. As a family, it's only a few days on. Have you been able to talk about it sort of more broadly?
Well, I sort of steered off talking to the media about it until I'm at party conferences. It sort of becomes a bit of inevitable to discuss it. Really for exactly that reason, which is it is one of these things, as happens, people will be familiar with this, when you experience tragedy, you think you're okay, and then a wave of it comes back across again, and I think it's been like that for the whole family. What I find depressing about the attack is, on one level, we sort of thought and hoped, actually, at first, it was a sort of lone attacker who'd become radicalised, maybe was reading stuff online, And that indeed was supported by the message the family initially put out, saying that they're devastated, it was a heinous crime. And then later that day, it transcribed that the father who put that message out had himself posted online absolutely disgusting material on the day of the 7th of October. Remember, that was the day that Hamas went and murdered all of those people, supporting them. And so you think, for his son, what chance did he have? And, you know, I just think this has to be a moment for the community, all communities, to come together and just kind of say, look, this is not the country that we are, and it's not the people that we are. And actually, I was talking to the rabbi at that synagogue a few months ago when I addressed a dinner at that location, at that synagogue. And he was saying, actually, we have great community relations here. We get together with the mosques, with the churches, with the synagogues, and we all get along. And actually, I've had that message from a lot of people, and we can't allow this one individual to change that. But I think it's very important we redouble our efforts as a country to make sure it's not changed either.
Okay, so Grant, just a thought from you, if I can, as a former Home Secretary for a little while at least, on the government's plans to make protest perhaps harder, restrictive, of giving police greater powers. Do you think that's the right step to take? You know, there are some civil liberties groups who are concerned about it.
Look, we always have to balance civil liberties, of course. The trouble is, if you allow these things to go completely unfettered, that some people start to think that kind of very extreme behaviour might be acceptable. And we've seen, I'm afraid, on too many of those marches, people breaking the law, being arrested, climbing monuments, abusing the police. And I think there does have to be a line drawn at some place. Of course, freedom of speech and something we cherish hugely in this country, but getting the balance in the right place, I do think, means, and particularly how bloody insensitive was it for those people to go out the very next day and go and join those protests. I mean, have some humanity is what I'd say. And if it requires you know, some adjustments to the law, then yeah, I think the government in this case would have my full support.
Well, we did hear that from the government, and it's good to finish on a point of agreement, especially on this issue. Sir Grant Shapps, thank you very much for joining us this morning. My best to you and, of course, to your father-in-law and your family. Thanks for your time.